On episode 329 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Dr. Joel Kahn and discuss his book, The Plant-Based Solution. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/329. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Our guest today is a world-leading cardiologist, a best-selling author, and a popular lecturer who inspires others to think scientifically and critically about the body's ability to heal through proper nutrition. He serves as a clinical professor of medicine at the Wayne State University School of Medicine in Detroit and is founder of the Kahn Center for Cardiac Longevity. He also opened a restaurant for healthy food called Green Space Cafe. With no further ado, here's Dr. Joe Kahn. So, Dr. Kahn, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Good day, wherever you're listening, whatever time of day. And thank you. I'm excited to be on this and chat about some important stuff with you.
And it is very important. There's so much information out there that I think it's hard for people to really grasp how much diet means and then actually get to the bottom of, okay, what is a good eating strategy for us to be healthy, to live longer, to have energy, to do all the things we want to do in our lives. We need good nutrition to do those things. And your book, The Plant-Based Solution, I think is a very good primer for someone that wants to understand the eating style of being a vegan. So I appreciate this because there was a lot of information, a lot of science in here, a lot of things that I just kind of sat back for a moment and pondered. There's not many health and fitness books that do that to me anymore because I've read so many, but yours was one where I sat there and read it, and then I wanted to just kind of absorb what that study was about or absorb what you were talking about in one of your classic rants in this book. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the book takes time and effort, and the whole idea is to have an impact.
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the things that I found really interesting as I got into it was that folks they'll try an eating style, and vegan is what I would term as a more restrictive eating style than a lot of others. You had a background in having somewhat of a restrictive eating style, and then you noted in the book that when the eating style is associated with ethics, that it has a much more better uptake than when we're just doing it for health reasons. And I think that's a commitment thing that comes out of that because of the emotion associated with it. But let's take just a moment and kind of get into these CAFOs and how our meat now is produced, because I think that's one of the big stepping stones for people that want to consider. So can you tell us a little bit about how our meat is produced and, what's going on out there? Because we're trying to feed almost 8 billion people as we go. But we're not doing a very good job of managing our resources, are we?
No. There is pressure to produce food for more people, but and it led 60, 70 years ago to adopting some of the strategies that Henry Ford and production lines, assembly lines kind of did in my hometown of Detroit to make higher production and more efficiency. But that meant concentrating animals, not free to graze and live a life of clover and grass, but putting them into buildings without sunlight, with food that was cost effective and rapid growing, but not necessarily their natural food nor the healthiest food. And it's led into both a nutritional disaster, but it's also led to an environmental disaster. And if you care at all and have been around for the last decade, you can't help but have seen on occasion videos that despite all these tough laws that try and keep the public isolated from the idea that their burger or steak actually ever was connected to a living animal with feelings that probably went through absolute hell to end up on their plate. If you care at all about that, you realize, the system has to change. And even the meat industry and visionaries, Richard Branson, Virgin Airlines and such, are talking about, this is the worst thing we could have created, and it will be different from technology. But the pressure there is still to feed a lot of mouths. And I agree. I'll just make one comment on your intro. A fully plant-based diet is restrictive in that at Thanksgiving and some corporate functions, there's going to be a moment that you pause because the things on the table may not all meet your criteria. But almost every health diet out there is different than the standard American fare, and it requires some restriction and some mindfulness and some decision making. And until we have it, that a corporate celebration, a hospital celebration, a National Nurses Day actually is carrots and celery and hummus and salad and bean burgers, and which is not what's happening now. It's ice cream and cakes and donuts and sugary drinks, all versions. It's not just the plant-based vegan version. I've had lunch sometimes with some of my friends, I would say on the other side of the table, doing hardcore paleo, hardcore keto diets. And they have more difficulty than I do, eating in a cafeteria, eating at a office building where we lectured on a panel. So nutritional excellence takes work, and nutritional excellence is crucial. But I think sometimes it's easier just to grab an apple, a banana, an orange, or some steamed broccoli than it is to try and construct the perfect alternative health movement, menus of the paleo movement, even the Mediterranean diet at times. Garbage food is everywhere. That's still the go-to, unfortunately.
Okay, and I agree. I mean, I've tried various types of eating styles, and you're right. You have to be thoughtful about it. You have to be mindful about it, and probably that to me that might be one of the best benefits of the vegan diet initially, is that it really gets you thinking about the food that you're putting in your body. And
right.
There's a lot of science to back up the vegan diet from a health perspective, but there's actually also a lot of science out there that supports the DASH diet, which is an Americanized version of the Mediterranean diet. You talked about the DASH diet a little bit in your book, and you cited some studies where the DASH diet was actually put forward as a healthy diet, and then you kind of leaned a little bit and said there's also a vegan version of the Mediterranean diet that they could have included in the study but didn't. Can you go a little bit into the DASH diet and why maybe having a small amount of meat and some fish is a problem?
Yeah, so probably a lot of the public still doesn't recognize. I mean, I think a lot of the public, if you ask them questions about what's the Mediterranean diet, would be kind of like a Jimmy Kimmel interview on the street, and you get all kinds of interesting. The med diet might be medication diet or something. I mean, trying to define what is the Mediterranean diet, even amongst health experts, engenders controversy, but amongst the public, it's probably almost uninterpretable. When indeed it's, reduce red meat, fish if you choose, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, wine, and olive oil. I mean, that's a traditional Mediterranean diet. There is a cardiologist in England trying to turn the Mediterranean diet into a low-carb, high-fat version and taking away all the grains and putting in coconut oil. Damn, I mean, it's just total insanity. I only point that out because we disagree about so many things. But the DASH diet stands for Dietary Approach to Stop Hypertension. It's a research study that our government has done twice, paid for twice, DASH1 and DASH2, way to eat to reduce the burden of high blood pressure on the public health. In fact, high blood pressure worldwide is the single number one cause of death, and from its consequences, heart disease, kidney disease, strokes, blood vessel disease like aneurysms. And so it's a big deal. And they did first, and they repeated it in low version, it's just promoted. And you're right, when the planning committee went to sit down, and a physician named Dr. Frank Sachs from Harvard, it really was geared to be a vegetarian diet. And then they backed off before they launched it, saying that we don't think the acceptance amongst the public was going to take a full vegetarian diet. So they allowed it to be a version of the Mediterranean diet. I agree. And it proved to be beneficial, and it proved that reducing salt, adding in plants, cutting back red meat, upping your whole grains, fruits, and vegetables was beneficial and lowered blood pressure. And when it's it's kind of, even though that's 10 to 15-year-old news, lately when the U.S. News and World Report rates the overall best diet for anyone in America to follow, the DASH diet has popped up as number one on the list. And that's reasonable. It's way better than what most people are eating. You can always refine it, but if we could instantly flip the switch in every work cafeteria, hospital cafeteria, vending machine, and all supported only the DASH diet, we'd be, from a health standpoint, way down the road towards a better place.
Yeah. It's funny how much people will take a something that works. There's a study saying this diet's great, and then they want to spin it a little bit and add something or take something away and say this should be just as good. There's no science behind coconut oil with the DASH diet, so obviously it's not the DASH diet. And I understand what they're trying to do there with the kind of the big popularity of ketosis and ketogenic diet. I don't know that adapting the Mediterranean diet to that style is going to give you the same health effects that you would have had with that. And I'm guessing also with the DASH diet and him trying to make it a little bit more fatty, that we're talking about adding a little bit more olive oil than you would normally have in a DASH diet. You're not a big fan of olive oil. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I actually want to make sure, let me just quickly circle back. So you asked about how food is produced, particularly meat, and more than 95% of any meal an American is eating, whether it's a burger, a piece of pork, a piece of chicken, a piece of beef, other fowl, turkey, are not out there enjoying life and part of it, like Sound of Music and Julie Andrews. I mean, they're in contained, high efficiency organizations called CAFOs, confined animal factory organizations. And there's, because of the inability of these animals to have any kind of reasonable fresh air, fresh food, free existence. There's just horrible abusive practices. The need for antibiotics is uniform. In fact, I think it's about 85% of all antibiotics in the United States are given to animals in this setting to allow them to live long enough without mass infection to allow the manufacturer to garner some profits from selling them to a slaughterhouse, plus hormones to grow them as quick as possible, plus just terrible, terrible, terrible abuse, plus the workers in these CAFOs from post-traumatic stress disorder and others suffering premature diseases, probably from the occupational exposure to unbelievable dust and chemicals, as well as just the emotional stress of dealing with this situation. So, and then they spill all the contents into surrounding ground, water, the unbelievable quantities of manure and such that we dealt with. So, it's easy, and you hear many meat-based podcasts talk about, absolutely we are in agreement that CAFO-raised meat is the worst choice amongst any animal eater. But when you get down to the reality, if you live near a Whole Foods and you got a few extra dollars, you can buy all the grass-fed beef you want, and maybe that's a better choice. But for 95+% of Americans eating at a work cafeteria, a hospital cafeteria, a vending machine, a fast food, even most restaurants, they're not getting that. They're supporting the CAFO world, and they're experiencing a dirty form of food for their own health. So, and then when you get to olive oil, so a teaching that's promoted by both the Harvard School of Public Health and a very well-known and close friend of mine, Dr. David Katz at Yale, is when we talk about a single food, you want to talk about, is it good, is it bad, is it healthy, but what are you using it in place of? So there's clear-cut data from Harvard School of Public Health that if your go-to is ghee, butter, and lard to saute, to cook, to spread on bread, as is a common practice, lard on bread, and you substitute, unbelievably, vegetable oils or olive oil as a slightly different vegetable oil than, let's say, safflower oil, sunflower oil, that you will lower your risk of developing heart disease by that substitute. In a very large study last July, it was estimated with way over 100,000 data points. If you switch to vegetable oils, and I put in the word organic right away, and I would put in the word not much, you can actually lower your risk of heart attacks and such by 25+%. And if you substitute olive oil, it's actually not as much of an advantage, but it's still about a 10% advantage compared to lard, butter, and ghee. So it's the better choice for somebody that says, I'm putting something slimy on my food or oily on my food or greasy on my food or such. Then, you still ask the basic question, what's in olive oil? And it's mainly what are called monounsaturated fatty acids, which is better than the mix that's found in lard, butter, and ghee. There still is a reasonable amount of saturated fat. It's plant-based saturated fat, but body doesn't always discern where that's coming from, about 15%. And there's a mix of data out there, but the core data is, I'm a cardiologist. If you're dealing with serious heart disease, and there's millions of people out there that are, and you're wanting to use your diet to prevent serious heart disease, stop serious heart disease, or reverse serious heart disease, as has been shown to be possible by Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, Dr. Joel Furman, approved by Medicare as a authorized treatment plan for heart patients, oil drops out of the picture. It's actually dropped out of the picture since the 1940s, when some very bright researchers identified that diets free of added fats, diets free of added oils actually seem to make heart patients live longer. So in my world, olive oil is not a health food for the sick heart patients I've seen in my office. Now, you're 28 years old, you're at a restaurant, and you could, make the choice of putting a creamy, buttery dressing on your salad or a mixture of balsamic and olive oil for reasons I just told you. There's actually a lot of, you got to be as careful with olive oil as you got to be with your meat source. There's a lot of fraud in the olive oil world. You can pay extra for extra virgin olive oil at the store, and not always is it extra virgin olive oil. It's more expensive. So it's a no-brainer for people with no ethics to put in a cheaper version and charge more. So you want to, get a good source, know where it's coming from. Spain, Italy, Greece are some of the big countries rather, that you might want to strive to find a better source from. So I do not live a complete oil-free, olive oil-free diet. I don't have heart disease. I know that as a fact. I do the proper testing, but I keep it very, very light and many days none. In my restaurants, I own 3 restaurants. We always have a multitude of entrees that require no oil to produce, to allow patients who are following that to have a option that's healthy and without oil. So you saute in water, you saute in wine, you saute by steaming. It's an easy process to cook without oil.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, with any diet that is going to be restricting certain foods, so we're going to limit certain foods that we're just not going to eat, there's the potential that we're not going to get all the nutrition that we need. So in being mindful of, okay, if we're going to go vegan, what are the supplements that we would need to consider, because we're just not getting enough of them or any of them from our foods?
Yeah. And then, I want to just intro this. If you construct a entirely vegan diet, a whole food, plant-based, lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds diet, the odds are your health will be enhanced. It's not 100% guaranteed, but the odds are very favorable. And let's talk about the things you're not going to need if you early in life or any time in life adopt a whole food, plant-based diet. Many medications, Viagra being one, diabetic medications, blood pressure medications, heart medications. It's not 100% guaranteed, but you are favoring the chance that you're not going to need to be that. I'm almost 60 years old. I've had the pleasure of being completely plant-based for 40 years, which started as an accident, but it was a very good accident when I was 18 years old. Take no prescription drugs and feel good every day. That's a pretty good place to be as you're approaching 60, and I wish it on everybody. And a healthy plant diet is a great foundation to get to that point. But if you're going to eat nothing but plants, beans and seeds and grains and such, you want to be cognizant that B12 is in dirt, and cows graze on dirt, and their meat gets enriched with B12 because they're beasts. If we would just get down and eat some dirty carrots, we wouldn't need to consider supplementing, but we do. It's just inappropriate to be on a long-term plant diet, completely plant diet, and not be aware that B12 can be a deficient nutrient. It's in some soy milks and hemp milks and such, but take a B12 pill 3-4 times a week. Vitamin D is a challenging nutrient for everybody to get. Meat eaters, fish eaters, plant eaters. There's a lot in mushrooms. A lot of the plant milks are fortified with vitamin D, as is our cow milks. But Dr. Michael Greger recommends, I recommend 2,000 international units of vitamin D3 a day, maybe 250 micrograms of vitamin B12, 3, 4, 5 times a week. And finally, the new one on the block is omega-3. We don't eat fish. Fish don't make omega-3 fatty acids like EPA, DHA. Fish eat algae. Algae make it. So now there are algae-based supplements that have EPA, DHA, just enough to make sure that you're getting enough to make your membranes and your brain and your other organs work optimally. Adding in one a day. There are some multivitamins out there for vegans that have all these, makes it brainless. There's a spray out there you can take that has all these in them, makes it really easy and brainless. It's a very, very small price, literally, in terms of what it costs. And habit-wise, to say, I've constructed the whole food, plant-based diet that favors longevity and health. I've watched the amount of oils or eliminated them, and I take a couple vitamins a day. As really, in my practice of advanced cardiology I do in Detroit, where everybody gets nutritional testing, my meat eaters are missing as much or more than my plant eaters. But I'm very sensitive. Be a smart plant eater, not a sloppy plant eater, by taking the proper supplement.
Yeah, and I think there were two really important points that you had in there. One is that we have a need for some of these, and we can actually, if we're eating whole foods, and I think that's one of the big things I want to put out there is these are not manufactured in a box foods. These are the whole foods. You get them in the produce section, you get them at the farmer's market, and you're starting from that base. The other side of this that I wanted to get into was that you'd mentioned that you can actually get blood tests, for vitamin D and the vitamin B12. We can actually test for that when you get your labs done. I don't think there's anything for omega-3 at this point, but
there is.
Okay.
And if your healthcare provider doesn't want to do it, some of the online companies like Wellness FX or lifeextension.com, you can pay to get a omega-3 blood level and such. So yeah, they are out there, and I do them on every patient. And oh my God, some of my patients are like so deficient in omega-3. And what follows that is your cholesterol goes up, inflammation goes up, sometimes blood sugar goes up. And you don't need a diabetic drug, and you don't need a cholesterol drug, and you don't need a blood pressure drug. You need to start eating 2 tablespoons a day of ground flaxseed, maybe some hemp, maybe some chia seeds, walnuts, leafy greens, and maybe taking 1 small capsule a day of algae omega-3. And I routinely, 6 weeks later, repeat their blood work, and the omega-3 levels up, and all those other numbers are down. Sophisticated, but really widely available nutritional analysis lets you be pretty darn good at this stuff.
Now, one of the important things that's out there, when people are going to try to start something, is I think having a plan that gets us at least into it long enough. And 3 weeks, 21 days is probably enough time for you to start recognizing some of the health benefits, to get some of the hard parts of it out of the way. But you actually have a plant-based solution 21-day menu set in here that I think is actually quite brilliant, because there's enough variety there. And we're not talking, okay, all you're going to get is celery and carrots. These are actually foods, whole food meals that you can get by with, and you actually recognize as a meal, not, like I said, a salad all the time. Do you mind? You want to take a few moments to kind of talk about your 21-day menu and the rest?
Sure. Thank you for that. I'm not a culinary trained chef. I mentioned it briefly. I do own 3 restaurants, 2 in Detroit, 1 in Austin, Texas, that are completely plant-based. So I'm around food people. I employ food people. I research food people. And it's there. But I am in the kitchen a pretty primitive guy. I mean, I'll tinker around and make some mistakes, but I'm not making mirepoix. And if anybody knows how to spell that, let me know. So the 21-day program is based, first of all, and many, many people say that when they feel better when they've switched from their previous diet to a plant-based diet. And after about 3 weeks, the dairy's gone, and the processed food's gone, and the fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts, and seeds have been increased. And number 2, it takes about that long to acquire the taste. There are some people that just aren't grooving on Brussels sprouts and such. So you sometimes can bite into an apple and it's an explosion of flavor after a few weeks of not having had a burger, not having had bacon, not having had cheese fries, and eating in a healthier pattern. So that's the 3 week part and why. And the more importantly are the recipes. They're simple. Let's get some simple breakfast down with overnight oats, overnight chia pudding, easy smoothies, chickpea omelets, some stir fries for breakfast. I mean, frankly, I didn't put in the book. Half of Europe eats salad for breakfast when you go to a salad bar in a European hotel. Just cut up some cucumbers and tomatoes and mint and cilantro, and if you're into it, some olive oil, and you'll be, in a good place. And then, also simple lunches. The one that's been the biggest hit in the book is a chickpea mash that really, okay, Doc, I take a tuna sandwich to work every day. What am I going to take instead of a tuna sandwich? Well, get 2 pieces of good whole grain bread like Killer Dave's or Ezekiel. Put a chickpea mash in the middle. Don't need to do it with mayonnaise and eggs and high fat. There are now some plant-based mayonnaises out there. Put a lot of spices. Almost all the recipes enjoy the health-boosting benefit of turmeric and ginger and garlic and parsley and rosemary and such. And this chickpea mash has been great. And then we just need a few staples for dinner. We need a good soup. We need a good chili. We need a good casserole. Again, people are on the move. One good bean burger. So there's a variety of choices in this 3-week eating plan that undoubtedly will satisfy most everybody's ability to explore. People can, alter the recipes a bit. Some people don't like cilantro. Some people do. Some people hate mushrooms. Some people like. So, yeah, I think people will find it pleasing. They come right out of my kitchen. They're not gourmet recipes out of my restaurant that might challenge, people. They're to be practical. And I think at the end of 3 weeks, maybe a few pounds, maybe a little bit clearer skin, maybe a little better digestive tract with less heartburn and easier bowel movement. These would be some of the expectations people could actually expect to see happen.
Yeah. And as I look at and think about all the different eating styles that are out there, and they're coming up with new ones every day, it seems like, I just want to kind of put this out there that vegetables have to be a core of our diet. They're going to be what's providing us with the nutrition, the fiber, all the things that are going to keep us healthy. And so any move that you can make towards a more plant-based, and by that we mean whole food plant-based diet, I believe is a healthful decision. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to review your book. Like I said, it had me thinking through things at times, just stopping to meditate on them. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have you on the podcast. If someone wanted to learn more about you, learn more about the book, where would you like for me to send them?
Yeah, probably the central point where I live on the web is my website, drjoelkahn.com, and that's drjoelkahn.com. Lots of blogs, lots of YouTube connections, Twitter connections, Instagram connections, Facebook connections, and then the book is there, and that's the 5th book I've written. There'll be more. I enjoy the process of writing blogs and writing books. And I appreciate too, and like you say, the worst meal with a salad is a dramatically better meal. The worst pizza piled up with arugula, green peppers, garlic, and onion is a far better choice. Now, then you can learn to say, actually, the part here that's really good for you is if I take the cheese off and leave the marinara and all the vegetables, I actually have an amazing platform for health. So, it's a process. For most people, inch by inch, it's a cinch, yard by yard, it's hard. Not a bad place to be, but get going, start today, eat more plants, eat less animals, save the world by closing down these CAFOs. These are real issues right now today.
I agree. So this is episode 329. You can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/329, and I'll make sure to have a link to Dr. Kahn's website and whatnot there. So again, Dr. Kahn, thank you so much for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Well, thank you. And 40 plus is really the thing. That's when the body starts to kick back for the habits during those first decades. And that couldn't be a better title for why a whole food plant-based diet like the Plant-Based Solution is a path to getting your mojo back. Maybe that'd be my next book, Mojo on Meals.
You have some very intriguing titles. I have to say that. So again, thank you, Dr. Kahn.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Dr. Kahn. I think we can all agree that there is room for more plant-based foods on our plate each night and each day. So, do take that to heart, the things you learned today, and try to apply them in your life. And if you got something valuable from today's episode, I'd really appreciate if you would go to iTunes and tell me about it in a review. You can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/review, and that'll give you an opportunity to give us a rating, and I hope you give us a 5-star, and you can give us a review. So if there's something you took special out of today's episode, I really would appreciate if you take the time to go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/review and leave that short review today. Thank you. Also, I really want to encourage you to join our Facebook group. You can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/group. And that's a great place for you to generally interact with me. If you have questions, that's a really good place to be. It's a lot of like-minded people and just a great opportunity for you to share your wins, ask your questions, and just really kind of have a very supportive group of people that all want the same thing that you do. And that's to be healthier and more fit while we're over 40. And then finally, I want to apologize. I had put a link in the show a couple weeks ago for an opportunity to have a 15-minute session with me, and I inadvertently that blew up on the tech. Apparently, I didn't flip a certain button, just one button, didn't flip the button, and as a result, people got some errors when they were trying to go through that link. And I sincerely apologize about that. It was a little technical glitch. It's my fault. So I do apologize about it. But if you go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/talk, that's actually going to take you to some spots I've put on my calendar to have a specific answer session with you. So if there's some questions you've got about health and fitness, some topics you want me to talk about on the podcast, this is the place to go. Just go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/talk. It'll allow you to book a 15-minute time with me. And then we'll basically, we'll go ahead and get on the phone or we'll get on Zoom and we'll have that conversation. So go ahead and go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/talk, and we can have a conversation about the things that matter most to you. Well, short of that, I do hope that you enjoyed the podcast, and I do want to see you back here next week. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we'll discuss modes of transportation. How are you going to get through your wellness journey? Until then, have a happy and healthy day.